With Kenyan Gen Zs. With Kenyan Gen Zs. With Kenyan Gen Zs. Viva Kenya, viva. Viva Kenya, viva. Viva Kenya, viva. Ruto tawe. Ruto tawe. Ruto tawe. Umasikini. Umasikini. Ufisadi. Mauaji ya vijana. So this is not the first generation of Kenyan patriots to have to make the ultimate sacrifice of their lives in pursuit or in the sacrifice of freedom for our country. In the 1950s, the Kenyan army that you spoke about, the Kenya Liberation Army, more famously known as the Mau Mau, of young men and young women made that sacrifice again before us. They made this sacrifice against an oppressor colonial system that was, in those days, all-powerful, all-seeing, and in fact, at that time, the British Empire, they said that the sun would never set on the British Empire for two reasons. One, because it extended the width and breadth of the earth, but also that they intended to rule us forever. True or false? But little is known about the Kenya Liberation Army, the Kenya Land Liberation Army, the Mau Mau, that they were one of the first few. They were one of the first armies to stand up to colonial rule. And lo and behold, in a short span of 5-6 years, obviously there was other dynamics, but they prevailed over this system. So that bloodline of courage is not new in Kenya. In fact, the dreadlocks that you wear, those were originally stamped in blood, in sweat, and in tears. The leader of that movement was called Dedan Kimathi. Dedan Kimathi, it is famously said that at his deathbed, he was given an option to either collaborate with the British in oppressing his people or to die. And what did he say? He said, my blood will continue to water the tree of freedom. So this is not new to the Kenyan people. Fast forward, the neocons took over. The likes of Kenyatta won. And they continued to assert a colonial system on the Kenyan people, famously passing what was called Section 2 of the Constitution, establishing Kenya as a one-party state. And that continued even past the death of Kenyatta. One Mr. Moi took over and even christened himself and nicknamed himself Nyayo. You know what Nyayo means? It means in the footsteps of the oppressor. So that system did not change. But lo and behold, another generation in the 1990s rose up against that system. I have met people who are in their 50s, 60s, who have bullets lodged in their bodies from that struggle. So this fight is not new. And I'm saying this because Gen Zs need to know that they come from a long line of revolutionaries. Viva Kenya, viva. Viva Kenya, viva. Little is also known that the man Ruto grew up or came of age in this system, but on the other side, famously being a part of what was called the Y2K movement, I believe. Y2K. YK92. And their work was specifically to shut down the multi-party system in Kenya. That's where this man learned his tricks. People are seeing him today. I grew up in Eldoret. Eldoret is it's a town that's in the Rift Valley. And Ruto was actually my MP, my Minister of Parliament. And even then, he was known for his cruelty. You saw those methods in full display in 2007, where mothers, children were killed in cold blood for only being different in ethnicity and being different in creed. He incited his people to call other communities weeds amongst them. That's how he ended up at the ICC. People forget, to someone's point earlier, that we need to look at our leaders from the lens of who they are, not what they tell us. You judge a fruit by you judge a tree by its fruit. And the only thing that this man has done is cause death, destruction, mayhem, and theft in Kenya. In 2013, he became the deputy president. On or around January 15th, 2015, I lived in Langata. And those who know me well know that I'm a long-term resident. I actually stood for office in Langata. And one of the things that is the trademark of Mr. Ruto is his ability to steal. He has a voracious appetite for land, particularly, and public resources. He has specialized his entire career in the theft of public resources. He made one fatal error and went to steal land from a playground on Langata Road, a school called Langata Road Primary School. I used to live about 5 minutes from there. So when the commotion started, any sensible adult ran over there. And what we found shocked us for two reasons. One, you had young kids, the age between 8 and what you'd call elementary school and maybe upper middle school, 8 and 14, in a standoff with the police, with their guns, with their batons, with dogs. And these kids stood resolute in the Occupy Playground movement. Boniface Mwangi was also there. The two of us were there. The media captured this event. At the time, I used to work in government, with government. Dr. Matiang'i might, if he was here, he would tell you about the ease of doing business projects. So I'm an engineer by training. I just happen to have opinions. So we were coming from a meeting with quite a senior cadre of public officers. And everybody had an opinion. Oh, these young people, they are spoiled, they're rebellious. And I stopped them and I told them, number one, I was there. You saw children. I saw young lions. And lo and behold, those kids who were 14, 12, then, are the ones who are revolting today on the streets. I then told those senior government officials, if you do not do something, in fact, Matiang'i was in a lot of meetings which I sat through. If we don't do something about this economy now, that was in 2015, within 10 years, there's going to be a revolution in this country. I was 1 year late. In 2014, 2024, what happened? The young people, those young lions, now coming of age, showed the world what they're made of. Showed the world what they're made of. Think about this for a moment. So June 24th, by the way, it's a very seminal year. It's a very seminal day in Kenya's calendar. It's the same day, by the way, Dedan Kimathi was hung. On the following day, last year, the revolution poured into the streets. And I asked myself one question. It was, I believe, like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, the day of the week, during the week, when young people are supposed to be working. People are supposed to be employed. They're supposed to be running businesses. In fact, here, when we want to do events, we do them over the weekend for good reason. Because if you call an event on Thursday, nobody shows up. Now, think about it. You call an event on social media, revolution or tweet, and millions of young people show up on the streets. What does that tell you? Think about it for a moment. It tells you these young people have no hope. Someone said that earlier. They have no vision for their future. They see the world in very bleak terms. They don't have anything that they are doing with their time. And that should concern not just us, but particularly concern the government. And what is their response when these young people came out to protest? Instead of listening to them, they came to air their opinions and say, we are hurting. As a young man, I want to have some vision in life, have some progress in my life, that I can marry my childhood sweetheart and start a family with them and live some version of the Kenyan dream. But what are they left with? Nothing. Insults. Being killed. You know, taking life is a whole other level of cruelty, because you're killing these young people because they represent the future. Because they represent the future. Because they see the world for what it can be, not what it is today. and you decide to silence that candle, to shut it down. These are people's children. These are people's future husbands and future wives. These are future leaders. And you cut them down without even thinking twice about it. What does that then say about the government? I've just heard today them saying, oh, you're a movement of hate. Yes, we hate them. How do you love someone who kills you? With Kenyan Gen Zs, we rise. With Kenyan Gen Zs. And rise we will. Rise we will. The question I often get is, so in the context of all this, so what is the future? What needs to happen to change our country? What needs to happen to change our continent? I always go back to our constitution. Our constitution speaks of the values of who we should be or who we aspire to be as a people. We want a country where what is espoused in the constitution, freedom of speech, of association, the right to protest and picket, the right to life, and not just life, but the right to have a life that is productive. All that is protected by the country. That's why Gen Zs are on the streets. They're not there because they hate their country. They love their country. They don't even want to leave. Most of us are here only because we could not find work at home. Most of us are here because we're the ones who got the opportunity to support the ones at home so that at least they have something to do. At least they have food on their tables. As you were saying, my brother, who wants to be in a foreign country, in this cold? Who wants to be here? But you have no choice. So the future lies in our constitution. I believe strongly. But I want to remind Gen Zs, the same constitution that gives you the right to protest and picket also gives you the responsibility. This is not a right. The responsibility to vote. There's only so far exercising your right to free association on the streets can go. Gen Zs need to vote. They need to take their frustrations to that ballot. Because I want to say this at peril of looking like a collaborator, that William Ruto and the system he represents have mastered the art not just of stealing the vote, but of earning it. Ruto didn't sneak into office. He was not only voted in, but he was passed into there by the Supreme Court. He was validly elected. By who? By the masses. And who are the masses? You. One of the experiences I had, and I'm about to finish. She's pointing at me because I'm taking a lot of time. I'm almost done. When I was running for office, I learned a few things about Kenyan politics. And we have party elections, then we have the general elections. Party elections happen 6 months before the actual election. In Langata, and this is the same situation across the country, we have 290 seats up for grabs. The dominance you have in the parliament also dictates how much money you get in the political parties fund by percent. So if you get 50% of the vote, you get 50% of the fund, which is 3% of our GDP, which is a ton of money. So already they are funding themselves without the participation of the citizen. Number two, at the political parties level, only about 1% of voters participate. That is very scary. In Langata, out of 150,000 voters, only 3,000 participate. Now think about that for a moment. Then you replicate that across the country times about 290. So technically, the president only needs to control 210,000 Kenyans to become president. Because the answer is predetermined. So these are constitutional responsibilities that we have, that we are not participating in our electoral process. Yes, let's protest. Yes, let's exercise our freedoms, but also let's exercise our responsibilities. I see a Kenya that is prosperous. I see a Kenya that is at peace with itself. I see a future of our country that is bright. And I'll tell you why. Because of these young people. They give me hope. They give me the assurance that this country, our country, Kenya, is a country that is in strong, knowledgeable, capable hands.